The great chamber floated in space like a diamond catching starlight. Inside, beings from 47 different worlds sat in a circle that stretched nearly a mile wide. Some had bodies made of metal. Others were just clouds of gas held together by force fields. A few looked almost human, but their eyes glowed with colors that didn't exist on Earth. Captain Hansol stood in the center of the chamber. His simple blue uniform looked plain next to the shining armor and flowing robes of the alien representatives. He had been standing there for 3 hours while they argued about what to do with humanity. "They breed too fast," said a creature that looked like a walking tree. Its voice sounded like wind through leaves. "Humans have spread to 200 colonies in just 50 years. They take planets we wanted. Worse than that," added another alien with 6 arms and purple skin. "They ask too many questions. They want to know everything. It makes them dangerous." Laughter filled the chamber. It wasn't friendly laughter. It was the kind of laughter that made Hansol's jaw tighten. He had heard it many times since humanity joined the galactic community 300 years ago. Ambassador J1 sat in the human delegation section with Dr. Yuna. They watched the proceedings quietly. J1 was an older man with gray hair and patient eyes. He had been doing this job for 20 years. Dr. Yuna was younger, with sharp features and hands that never stopped moving. She carried a data pad that she checked every few minutes. The High Chancellor Raxtel floated at the highest point in the chamber. He was made entirely of golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. His species had built cities between galaxies. They had learned to convert matter into pure energy. They considered themselves the wisest beings in the universe. "The human problem must be solved," Raxtel announced. His voice echoed from everywhere at once. "They have proven themselves unwilling to accept their proper place in the galactic order." A creature with scales like mirrors stood up. This was the Vrex Prime Minister. The Vrex were the most technologically advanced species in known space. They had weapons that could destroy stars. Their ships moved faster than anything else in the galaxy. "The solution is simple," the Vrex Prime Minister said. "Humans must surrender 80% of their colonies. They must accept our guidance in all matters of technology and expansion. If they refuse, we will remove them from the equation entirely." More laughter. This time it was louder. Hansol felt his device vibrate in his pocket. A quantum message from Earth. He didn't check it yet. He couldn't show weakness by looking away. "You speak of removing us," Hansol said. His voice was calm and steady. "May I ask a question?" The Vrex Prime Minister waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Speak, primitive. Amuse us with your words before you lose the right to speak at all. How many dimensions can your sensors detect?" Hansol asked. The question hung in the air. Several aliens shifted in their seats. "What a stupid question," someone muttered. The Vrex Prime Minister laughed. "Our technology spans 6 dimensions. We can see through time itself. We can calculate 1,000,000 possible futures in a single moment. We are beyond your understanding, human." "I see," Hansol said. He didn't say anything else. Ambassador J1 stood slowly. He walked to stand beside Hansol. The old diplomat looked around the chamber with an expression that was hard to read. "Honored representatives," J1 began, "we have listened to your concerns. We have heard your ultimatum. Before we respond, we would like to request a demonstration." "A demonstration?" Raxtel's light pulsed brighter. "Of what?" "Of human capability," J1 said simply. The chamber erupted with laughter again. This time it was so loud that the crystal walls vibrated. "What capability?" shouted someone. "Your ships are slow. Your weapons are weak. You can barely detect 4 dimensions. You think in 3 dimensions," added another voice. "You live in 4. You dream of 6. But you are trapped like insects on a leaf, unable to see the tree." Dr. Yuna leaned over to whisper something to another human delegate. The delegate nodded and quickly left the chamber. J1 waited for the laughter to die down. When it finally did, he spoke again. "We would like 1 week to prepare our demonstration. Then you can decide our fate based on what you see." The Vrex Prime Minister slithered forward. His eyes were like black holes. "You waste our time with games. But very well. We grant you 7 solar cycles. Not 1 moment more. Use this time to evacuate your civilians if you wish. It will make the extermination cleaner." Raxtel's light dimmed slightly. Even he seemed surprised by the Vrex's cruelty. But he didn't object. "The Council agrees. 7 days, humans. Then we will witness your demonstration. I suspect we will be disappointed." Or amused, someone added. More laughter followed. Hansel finally checked his device. The message was short. Project Threshold is ready. He looked at Dr. Yuna. She met his eyes and gave a tiny nod. Her hands had stopped moving. She looked calm for the first time that day. The three humans left the chamber together. Behind them, the aliens were already celebrating. They made bets on how long humanity's demonstration would last. Most guessed less than an hour. Some said minutes. In the corridor outside, Hansel stopped walking. They really have no idea, do they? Jaewon smiled. It was the first smile Hansel had seen from him in months. No, they don't. And that's exactly what we've been counting on. Dr. Yuna checked her datapad. The Transcendence is in position. All systems are stable. The crew is ready. Good, Hansel said. He felt the weight of what was coming settle on his shoulders. Then let's show them what humans can do when we stop being quiet. They walked toward their ship. Behind them, through the crystal walls of the chamber, they could see the stars. Somewhere out there, invisible to every sensor in the galaxy, something waited, something that would change everything. The aliens in the chamber continued their celebration. They laughed and made plans for dividing up human colonies. They talked about which species would get which planets. They discussed the best methods for removing humans from the galaxy. One of them noticed the slight shimmer in space near Earth. Not one of them detected the quantum fluctuations that rippled through dimensions they couldn't see. Not one of them understood that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 20 years. They would understand soon enough. In 7 days, the laughter would stop. 20 years earlier, Dr. Bora couldn't sleep. She sat in her small laboratory on Threshold Station, staring at numbers that refused to make sense. The coffee beside her had gone cold hours ago. Threshold Station orbited Earth on the dark side of the moon. Nobody knew it existed except for a handful of people in Earth Command. Officially, it was listed as a communications relay. Actually, it was humanity's most secret research facility. Dr. Bora ran the calculations again. The quantum foam measurements still showed the same impossible result. There was something there. Something in the space between spaces. A dimension that shouldn't exist according to everything the aliens had taught humanity. She called her graduate assistant. Yuna, come look at this. Yuna arrived 15 minutes later, her hair messy from sleep. She was young then, fresh from university, but she had a mind that could see patterns others missed. What am I looking at? Yuna asked, studying the data. Errors, Dr. Bora said, or at least that's what they should be. But they're too consistent. They repeat in a pattern. Yuna's eyes went wide. This is showing a 7th spatial dimension. That's impossible, Dr. Bora said, but she didn't sound convinced. The aliens say there are only 6 dimensions, Yuna continued. They've mapped them all. They've told us that anything beyond 6 is just mathematics, not reality. Dr. Bora leaned back in her chair. What if they're wrong? Or what if they can't see it? Yuna suggested quietly. That conversation changed everything. For the next 6 months, they ran tests in secret. They measured quantum fluctuations across the solar system. They analyzed data from every human sensor array. The pattern was always there. A 7th dimension existed, hidden between the folds of space that everyone else thought they understood. Commander Hyun-woo was the first military officer they told. He was a serious man who rarely smiled. He had fought in the border wars against the Vreks back when humanity still thought they could negotiate as equals. Show me, was all he said. They showed him, charts, graphs, mathematical proofs, evidence that couldn't be denied. Hyun-woo studied everything for 3 days. Then he made a single encrypted call to Earth Command. 1 week later, Project Threshold received unlimited funding and complete secrecy. If the aliens find out about this, Hyun-woo told them, they'll destroy us before we can finish the research. We've seen how they react when humans get too advanced. This has to stay hidden. The team grew slowly. Each scientist was carefully selected. Each military officer was tested for loyalty. They brought in specialists from every field. Quantum physicists, engineers, pilots who could think in ways that bent normal space. Specialist Mi Young joined the project 3 years in. She was a navigation officer who had gotten lost once during a routine patrol. Her ship had vanished for 6 hours. When she reappeared, she couldn't explain where she had been. The official report called it a sensor malfunction. Dr. Yuna interviewed her personally. Tell me what you saw. Angles that shouldn't exist, Mi Young said. She looked embarrassed. Colors that don't have names. I thought I was going crazy. You're not crazy, Yuna told her. You accidentally slipped into the 7th dimension. We've been looking for someone who's been there. Mi-young became their test pilot. She helped them understand how to navigate space that normal sensors couldn't detect. The design for the Transcendence took 8 years. It wasn't a ship in the normal sense. It was a bubble of controlled reality that could exist in multiple dimensions at once. The mathematics alone filled 300,000 pages. Dr. Kyung-hee solved the temporal problems. She was a physicist who specialized in time. If we exist in 7 dimensions, she explained, we won't just move through space differently. We'll move through time differently too. We could be in multiple moments at once. That sounds dangerous, Hyunwoo said. It's terrifying, Kyung-hee agreed. But it's also incredibly powerful. The construction happened in pieces. Components were built in different facilities across human space. Each piece looked innocent by itself. A power core here. A hull section there. Navigation computers that seemed too advanced for their stated purpose, but not suspiciously so. Assembly took place in the 7th dimension itself. They had learned to create small pockets of higher dimensional space. The Transcendence was built in a location that simply didn't exist from the perspective of normal 3-dimensional space. It's like building a house in a room that nobody knows is there. Dr. Bohr explained to Admiral Dong-hyun when he visited the project. Dong-hyun commanded Earth's conventional defense fleet. He was a practical man who didn't trust things he couldn't see. Show me this invisible room. They couldn't, that was the point. Even standing in the observation deck, looking at the exact coordinates where the Transcendence existed, they saw nothing. Only their specialized sensors could detect it, and even then, they only saw hints and echoes. How do we know it's really there? Dong-hyun asked. Dr. Yuna smiled. Test it. Fire something at those coordinates. Dong-hyun ordered a drone to shoot a practice beam at empty space. The beam vanished. 3 seconds later, it emerged from a different direction, having been redirected through dimensions the drone's computer couldn't process. Dong-hyun stared for a long moment. Then he nodded. Continue the project. Whatever you need. The crew selection was the hardest part. Living in 7-dimensional space put enormous stress on human minds. Most people couldn't handle it. Their brains couldn't process the information. Some went mad during testing. They found 50 people who could adapt. Mi-young was one. Captain Han-sol was another. Han-sol had been a combat pilot before becoming a diplomat. He had the rare ability to stay calm when everything around him stopped making sense. During his first test flight in higher dimensional space, he simply said, "Interesting," and continued with the mission. "You're not disturbed by any of this?" Dr. Yuna asked him afterward. "I grew up in Korea," Han-sol replied. "Then I lived on Mars. Then I flew between stars. Every step of my life has been learning to see things differently. This is just one more step." They trained for 5 years. The crew learned to navigate space that twisted in impossible ways. They practiced appearing and disappearing. They studied how to fight in dimensions where normal weapons were useless. The breakthrough came when Dr. Kyung-hee discovered they could affect lower dimensions from higher ones. "We can reach into 3-dimensional space from the 7th dimension," she explained. "It's like how a person can touch a drawing on paper. The drawing is 2-dimensional, but we exist in 3, so we can interact with it in ways the drawing can't predict or stop." That was when they realized the Transcendence wasn't just a ship. It was a weapon. A weapon so advanced that species who could only see 6 dimensions would have no defense against it. Commander Hyunwoo called everyone together 15 years into the project. "The galaxy is getting more dangerous," he told them. "The Vreks are talking about human restrictions. Other species are joining them. We're running out of time. How much longer do we need?" asked Earth Command over the encrypted channel. Dr. Bora looked at her team. At Yuna, now her equal in brilliance. At Mi-young, who could navigate impossible spaces. At Kyung-hee, who had tamed time itself. At the 50 crew members who had learned to exist in 7 dimensions. "We're ready," she said. "We've been ready for 6 months. We've just been making improvements." "Then wait," Earth Command ordered. "Wait until they force our hand. If we reveal this too early, they might have time to adapt. We need the element of complete surprise," so they waited. The Transcendence hung in 7-dimensional space, invisible and patient. The crew practiced every day. The scientists refined every system. They prepared for a moment they hoped would never come, but knew was inevitable. That moment arrived when the Vrex issued their ultimatum. On Threshold Station, Dr. Yuna received the message from the council chamber. She read it twice, then sent a single word back to Hansol. Ready? Dr. Bora stood beside her, now much older. Her hair had gone completely white. 20 years, she said softly. We've kept this secret for 20 years. Not much longer now, Yuna replied. In the hidden pocket of 7th-Dimensional space, the Transcendence waited. Its crew was assembled. Its systems hummed with power that bent reality around it. It was ready to enter the normal universe and show the galaxy something they had never imagined. The countdown had begun. In 7 days, everything would change. The 7 days passed like a held breath. Across human space, people prepared. Some evacuated to deep space stations. Others refused to leave their homes. News broadcasts showed families making difficult choices. Children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. In the council chamber, alien representatives gathered again. This time they brought recording devices. They wanted to capture humanity's humiliation for history. Some species had even sent artists to turn the moment into entertainment. Admiral Dong Hyun stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Seoul. Around him floated 200 human warships. It was the entire defensive fleet. Against what was coming, it might as well have been 200 paper boats. Sir, we're detecting hyperspace signatures, his tactical officer reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. How many? Dong Hyun asked, though he already knew. 10,000, sir. Maybe more. They're still coming through. The Vrex armada emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metal insects. Each ship was 3 times the size of the largest human vessel. Their weapons could vaporize mountains. Their shields could withstand star-level heat. Fleetmaster Vorthak commanded the armada from his throne ship. He was a Vrex of the old warrior caste, with scales that had been polished to mirror brightness. He had destroyed 17 civilizations in his long career. Humanity would be his 18th. Send them the standard warning, Vorthak ordered. The message reached every human ship and station. You have one final chance to surrender. Transfer control of your colonies within the next hour, or be removed from the galaxy. In the council chamber, Ambassador Jae-won stood alone. Dr. Yuna was back on Threshold Station. Captain Hansol was somewhere else entirely. It was just the old diplomat facing the assembled representatives of 47 species. Will you surrender? The Vrex Prime Minister asked. He sounded bored. The outcome seemed obvious. No, Jae-won said simply. The High Chancellor Raxtul's light pulsed. Then you choose extinction. This is foolish beyond measure. Perhaps, Jae-won agreed. Or perhaps we see something you don't. Enough riddles, someone shouted. Show us this demonstration you promised or admit you have nothing. Jae-won pulled out a small communication device. Captain Hansol, are you ready? In 7-dimensional space aboard the Transcendence, Hansol stood on a bridge that hurt to look at. The walls curved in directions that shouldn't exist. The view screen showed reality from angles that made normal geometry seem like a child's drawing. Around him, 50 crew members sat at stations that required them to think in 7 dimensions simultaneously. It was exhausting work. Several had nosebleeds. One was quietly crying, overwhelmed by the sensory input. Specialist Mi Young piloted the ship, though piloted wasn't quite the right word. She navigated through higher dimensions, finding paths that connected points in normal space in impossible ways. Dr. Kyung-hee monitored temporal stability. Sir, we're stable across 17 different timeline branches. We can manifest in any of them. Stay in this one for now, Hansol said. He activated his communicator. Ambassador, we're ready. Give the word. Back in the council chamber, Jae-won looked around at the assembled aliens one last time. Many were smiling. Some were laughing. A few looked sad as if they regretted what was about to happen but felt it was necessary. Very well, Jae-won said. Let me tell you what we discovered 20 years ago. We found a 7th dimension. Not a mathematical theory, a real physical dimension. We learned to see it, navigate it, and exist within it. The chamber erupted in laughter. Impossible, someone shouted. There are only 6 dimensions, added another. This is proven fact. We've mapped all of reality, the Vrex Prime Minister said. There is no 7th dimension. You lie in desperation? Jae-won smiled sadly. No, There is a seventh dimension. You simply can't see it. And because you can't see it, you never imagined we could. High Chancellor Raxtol's light brightened. This is your demonstration? Lies and fairy tales? You waste our time. Captain Hansol, J1 said into his communicator. Let them see. In orbit around Earth, Admiral Dong Hyun watched his sensors. They showed nothing unusual. Just empty space and the massive Rex Armada bearing down on humanity's homeworld. Then reality broke. That was the only way to describe it. Space itself seemed to crack open. Not like a door opening, more like a wound appearing in the fabric of the universe. From that wound, the transcendence emerged into three-dimensional space. Dong Hyun had been briefed about the ship. He had seen the classified reports. He thought he was prepared. He wasn't. The transcendence was enormous. It was the size of a small moon. But its size wasn't what made every sensor on every ship scream in alarm. It was the geometry. The ship had angles that couldn't exist, surfaces that curved through dimensions that normal eyes couldn't see. Looking at it made human brains hurt. Looking at it made alien computers crash. What is that? Someone whispered on Dong Hyun's bridge. That, Dong Hyun said quietly, is what we've been building. The ship existed in three-dimensional space, but it also existed somewhere else. It was here and not here at the same time. Sensors reported it was in a million places at once. Or maybe it was in one place that normal space couldn't properly contain. On the Vrex throne ship, Fleet Master Vorthak stared at his screens. What am I seeing? Where did this come from? It appeared from nowhere, sir, his sensor officer reported. She sounded terrified. One moment there was empty space. The next moment this was there. It didn't travel. It just appeared. Fire on it, Vorthak ordered. Destroy it immediately. 1,000 Vrex ships fired at once. Plasma beams, antimatter missiles, quantum disruptors. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. Every shot passed through the transcendence as if it wasn't there. Direct hits confirmed, the weapons officer reported, but no damage. The weapons are passing through the target as if it's not solid. It's phasing, Vorthak realized. It exists partially in another dimension. Our weapons can't touch it. In the council chamber, every alien representative had gone silent. The holographic displays showed what was happening. They showed the impossible ship. They showed the failed attacks. This is a trick, someone said. An illusion. It's real, Observer Talcine said quietly. He was a neutral scientist not aligned with any faction. His instruments were the finest in the galaxy. My sensors can barely detect it, but it's real. And it's operating on principles I don't understand. Han Sol's voice echoed through the council chamber. This is the transcendence. We exist in 7 dimensions. We can see you, but you cannot see us completely. We can affect you, but you cannot affect us. We have been watching this armada since it entered our space. Impossible, the Vrex Prime Minister hissed. Demonstrate further, Raxtol demanded. His light was flickering now, showing uncertainty for the first time in the council's long history. As you wish, Han Sol replied. On the transcendence, he turned to his weapons officer. Disable their ships. Non-lethal only. We're not murderers, the weapons officer nodded. She was crying from the strain of existing in 7 dimensions, but her hands were steady. She targeted 1,000 Vrex warships. The transcendence fired. But the weapons didn't come from the ship. They emerged from angles that didn't exist in normal space. They appeared inside the Vrex vessels, bypassing all shields and armor. They were quantum disruptors modified to work through higher dimensions. 1,000 Vrex warships suddenly went dark. Their power cores didn't explode. They simply forgot how to function. Their computers couldn't understand what had happened to them. One moment they were operational. The next moment their systems were just dead metal. Not a single crew member was hurt. But not a single ship could move. Fleet Master Vorthak stared in horror. How did they get through our shields? They didn't go through the shields, his science officer said. Her voice was barely a whisper. They appeared inside the shields. They came from a direction we can't defend against. Vorthak tried to order a retreat, but before he could give the command, his ship's systems went dark too. In seconds, the entire armada was disabled. 10,000 warships reduced to floating debris. Not destroyed, just turned off like someone had flipped a switch. The council chamber was completely silent now. You see, Ambassador Jae-won said quietly, we've been preparing for this moment for 20 years. While you laughed at us, we learned. While you mocked our questions, we found answers you never imagined existed. Han Solo's voice came through again. We can reach any point in your space instantly. We can appear anywhere from angles you cannot defend. We exist in dimensions you cannot perceive. And we did all of this while you assumed we were primitive. The implications settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Humanity hadn't just developed a new weapon. They had transcended the dimensional limitations that bound every other species in the galaxy. The silence in the council chamber stretched. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They all stared at the holographic displays showing 10,000 disabled warships floating helplessly in space. Observer Talcine was the first to speak. He was a scientist, not a politician. His loyalty was to truth, not power. "May I scan your vessel?" he asked Han Solo. "I need to understand what I'm seeing." "Go ahead," Han Solo replied. Talcine activated his instruments. They were the most advanced sensors in the known galaxy, capable of detecting quantum fluctuations across 6 dimensions. He pointed them at the transcendence, his screens filled with data that made no sense. Equations that broke down, numbers that shouldn't exist, geometric patterns that his computer refused to display because they violated fundamental laws of mathematics. "It's real," Talcine said, his voice filled with wonder and fear. "The 7th dimension is real. They're not just theorizing. They're there. They exist in a space that our technology cannot reach. The Vrex Prime Minister's scales had lost their shine. This must be some kind of weapon, a trick, an illusion designed to..." The transcendence moved, except moved was the wrong word. It didn't travel through space. It simply stopped being in one location and started being in another. No acceleration. No travel time. It was above Earth one moment, and beside the council chamber the next. The station shook as reality bent around the impossible ship. "We didn't move through space," Han Solo explained. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "We moved through dimensions. From your perspective, we teleported. From our perspective, we just took a shortcut through higher space." High Chancellor Raxtel's light had dimmed to barely a glow. "How long have you been capable of this?" "The theory." 20 years, J1 answered. "The working prototype?" 15 years. "The fully operational vessel?" 5 years. 5 years, someone whispered. "You've had this power for 5 years and said nothing? Would you have believed us?" J1 asked. "Would you have given us time to develop it peacefully? Or would you have destroyed us the moment you suspected we were becoming too advanced?" Nobody answered. They all knew the truth. Humanity had been right to keep their discovery secret. The galaxy's history was filled with promising species who had been guided into stagnation by the older civilizations. Dr. Yuna's voice joined the conversation from Threshold Station. "Let me explain what you're seeing. Normal space has 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. You've learned to perceive and manipulate 2 additional spatial dimensions. We discovered a 7th spatial dimension that exists between the quantum foam of reality." "That's impossible," an alien physicist said. "We've mapped the quantum foam. There's nothing there." "You've mapped it in 6 dimensions, Yuna corrected. "You can't see the 7th because your biology and technology are limited to 6-dimensional perception. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's only ever seen in black and white. The limitation isn't in reality. It's in your ability to perceive reality." Talcine was nodding slowly. "That's why our sensors can barely detect your ship. We're trying to measure something that exists primarily in a dimension we cannot observe. We only see the parts of it that intersect with our 6-dimensional space." "Exactly," Yuna confirmed. The Vrex Prime Minister tried to regain control of the situation. "Even if this is true, one ship cannot defeat our entire civilization. We have thousands of worlds, millions of vessels. You would need an army of these ships to..." The transcendence split. One moment there was 1 ship beside the council chamber. The next moment there were 5 identical ships. Then 10, then 50, except they weren't copies. They were the same ship, existing in multiple locations simultaneously. "We exist in 7 dimensions, Han Solo said. That includes time. We can manifest in multiple points of space-time at once. To us, this is 1 ship in 1 location. To you, it appears as many ships in many locations." Dr. Kyung-hee's voice added detail. "Think of it like this. Imagine a sphere passing through a flat sheet of paper. The paper dwellers would see multiple circles appearing and disappearing, not understanding they're all parts of the same sphere. That's what you're seeing now. multiple intersections of a single 7-dimensional object with your 3-dimensional space. The 50 images of the transcendence moved in perfect synchronization. They surrounded the council station. They appeared near Earth. They manifested beside the disabled Vrex Armada. All the same ship. All the same moment. You could be everywhere at once, someone whispered in horror. Yes, Hansel confirmed. We could appear in orbit around every major world in the galaxy simultaneously. We could strike from angles you cannot predict or defend against. We could disable your entire civilization's infrastructure in minutes without killing a single person. Fleetmaster Vorthak's image appeared in the council chamber. His throne ship's emergency backup systems had come online. He looked shaken, his perfect scales now dulled with fear. You could conquer the entire galaxy. We could, J1 agreed. But we won't, that's not who we are. Then what do you want? Raxtul asked. His light was slowly brightening again as he processed this new reality. We want to live, J1 said simply. We want to expand our civilization without being threatened every few decades. We want to explore and learn and grow without fear that some other species will decide we've become too dangerous and need to be eliminated. You want equality? Talcine said. We want to be left alone, Hansel corrected. Equality would imply we're on the same level. We're not. Not anymore. But we don't want to rule you. We just want you to stop trying to rule us. The implications crashed over the council like a wave. Humanity had become the most powerful military force in known space. Not through conquest or aggression, but through secret scientific achievement. They had transcended limitations that every other species considered absolute laws of physics. The Vrex Prime Minister's pride finally broke. How did you do it? How did a species that's barely been spacefaring for a few centuries achieve what we couldn't in millions of years? You assumed you knew everything, Dr. Yuna said. You mapped 6 dimensions and decided that was all there was. You built your technology and philosophy around that assumption. When we asked questions about quantum anomalies, you told us we were seeing errors in our primitive instruments. You were so certain of your superiority that you never considered you might be wrong. We had nothing to lose, Dr. Bora added, her old voice joining from Threshold Station. We were behind in every technology. We were mocked and dismissed. So we questioned everything. We looked at the parts of reality you had decided weren't worth investigating, and we found something you missed. A small alien delegate stood up. Her species was one of the weaker ones, often bullied by the Vrex and other major powers. If humans can access the 7th dimension, can others learn? There was a long pause. We don't know, Yuna admitted. The mathematics are incredibly complex. The perceptual framework required is unlike anything your species teach. It might be possible. Or it might be that some biological limitation prevents other species from perceiving what we can perceive. Or, Talcine suggested thoughtfully, it might be that humans evolved differently because you were the weak ones. You spent your history looking for advantages, questioning assumptions, trying to understand things from new angles. That cognitive flexibility might be what allows you to perceive dimensions the rest of us cannot. Ironic, Jaywin said with a slight smile. We developed our greatest advantage because we were underestimated. The transcendence pulled back together. The 50 manifestations merged into one. The ship repositioned itself above Earth, a silent guardian that could strike anywhere in the galaxy but chose to stay home. What happens now? Raxtul asked. His light was bright again, but it pulsed with uncertainty. Hansol looked at his crew. They were exhausted. Existing in 7 dimensions took enormous effort, but they held their positions ready to continue if needed. Now, Hansol said, we discuss the future, a future where humanity is no longer threatened, where our colonies are recognized as legitimate, where we're treated as partners, not problems to be solved. And if we refuse, someone asked quietly. Then we demonstrate further, Hansol replied. His voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath the words. We would prefer peace. But we will not accept extinction. Not anymore. Not ever again. The council chamber filled with nervous whispers. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years now faced a truth they never expected. The humans, the species they had mocked as primitive, had become something unprecedented. Not through war or aggression, but through curiosity and scientific brilliance. The balance of power had shifted, and there was no going back. 3 months had passed since the demonstration. The galaxy was still adjusting, Premier Jiwoo walked through the rebuilt council chamber. It looked different now. The seats had been rearranged. Humanity had a permanent position near the center, equal to the oldest and most powerful species. It was a position earned not through conquest but through capability. Jiwoo was younger than Jae-won had been, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been chosen specifically because she could be diplomatic while also being firm. The galaxy needed to understand that humanity's patience had limits. The emergency sessions after the demonstration had lasted for weeks. Some species wanted war, others wanted immediate peace. Most were simply terrified and didn't know what to do. The Vrex had been the first to surrender. Fleetmaster Vorthak had arrived at Earth with his entire command staff, their scales dulled in submission. Admiral Dong-hyun had met them personally. "We expected you to execute us," Vorthak had said. "We're not you," Dong-hyun had replied. "We don't kill out of pride." The Vrex had been forced to pay reparations for their aggression. Their military was reduced by 70%. Their territory was open to independent observers. It was humiliating for a species that had considered themselves the galaxy's supreme warriors, but they were alive. Every Vrex in that disabled armada had survived. Not one crew member had been harmed. That fact spread through the galaxy faster than any news had ever traveled. Humanity had the power to kill but chose not to. That scared the other species more than the weapon itself. In the new council chamber, Premier Jiwoo stood before the assembled representatives. Many of the old faces were gone. Leaders who had laughed at humanity had been replaced by their successors. The new delegates were more careful with their words. "We are here to discuss the Dimensional Accord," Jiwoo began, "a framework for peaceful coexistence between humanity and the rest of the galactic community." High Chancellor Raxtel's light pulsed. He was still in power, but barely. His authority had been damaged when he failed to recognize humanity's potential. "State your terms." "First," Jiwoo said, "immediate recognition of all human colonies as legitimate sovereign territory. No more claims that we're expanding too fast or taking planets you wanted." Nobody objected. They couldn't. "Second, humanity will share limited information about dimensional theory. Enough to prove it's real, not enough to weaponize. We will help other species begin to understand 7th-dimensional physics." Talzin leaned forward. "You would teach us?" "We would try," Jiwoo said. "We don't know if other species can perceive the 7th dimension the way we do. But we're willing to help you try. Knowledge should be shared, not hoarded." That surprised many in the chamber. They had expected humanity to guard their advantage jealously. "Third," Jiwoo continued, "the formation of the Dimensional Defense Corps. A human military branch specifically designed to patrol 7th-dimensional space. We will ensure no one else develops this technology for hostile purposes." "You would police the galaxy?" someone asked nervously. "We would protect it," Jiwoo corrected. "The 7th dimension is dangerous. If other species try to access it without proper understanding, they could tear holes in reality. We've already detected several experiments by various species trying to replicate our technology. Some came close to causing catastrophic damage." Raxtel nodded slowly. "We detected unusual quantum fluctuations near the Helix Nebula." "Was that one of these experiments?" "Yes," Dr. Yuna confirmed from her remote connection. "Someone tried to force open a 7th-dimensional portal using 6th-dimensional technology. They almost created a collapse point that would have destroyed 3 solar systems. We stopped it." The chamber fell silent. Humanity hadn't just revealed their power. They had already been using it to prevent disasters. "You've been protecting us?" a small delegate asked. "Even while we threatened you?" "We're not cruel," Captain Hansol said. He had been promoted to admiral after the demonstration. "We don't want anyone to suffer, not even our enemies." The Vrex Prime Minister, who had survived the political turmoil by barely a thread, spoke up. "What prevents you from using this power to conquer us all?" It was the question everyone was thinking, but few dared to ask. Premier Jiwoo looked directly at him. "Nothing prevents us. That's the truth you need to accept. We could conquer the galaxy. We could disable every military force, appear in every capital, control every trade route. We have the power to do whatever we want." Fear rippled through the chamber. "But we won't," Jiwoo continued, "because that's not who we are. We spent 300 years being the weak ones. We know what it's like to be helpless. We will not inflict that on others." "Words are easy," someone muttered. "Then watch our actions," Jiwoo replied. We've had this power for 5 years. In that time, we haven't conquered anyone. We haven't forced any species to submit. We revealed it only when you left us no choice. Judge us by what we do, not by what you fear we might do. Talzine stood up. I propose we accept the Dimensional Accord. Humanity has proven themselves trustworthy. They had every opportunity to destroy the Vrex Armada and chose mercy instead. They could have hidden their protection of the Helix Nebula, but chose transparency instead. They could have kept their knowledge secret forever, but are choosing to share it instead. Seconded, said the small delegate. The vote took an hour. In the end, it was unanimous. The Dimensional Accord was accepted. On Earth, Dr. Bora watched the broadcast with tears in her eyes. She was old now, confined to a wheelchair, but she had lived to see her discovery change the galaxy. Dr. Yuna sat beside her. We did it, Professor. You did it, Bora corrected. I found the door. You built the key. Hansel turned the lock. This was never just my achievement. At Threshold Station, Commander Hyunwoo oversaw the expansion of the Dimensional Research Institute. Scientists from 40 different species had applied to study there. Most would fail to perceive the 7th dimension, but some might succeed, and humanity was willing to help them try. Specialist Mi Young was training the first group of alien pilots in 7-dimensional navigation. It was slow work. Most of them got sick just looking at the higher dimensional displays, but a few showed promise. It's strange, Mi Young said to Dr. Kyung-hee. A few months ago they wanted to kill us. Now they want to learn from us. Fear became respect, Kyung-hee replied, and respect can become cooperation if we're wise. The Transcendence remained in orbit around Earth, a constant reminder of humanity's capability. But Captain Hansol had recommended building more vessels, not for war but for exploration. There are entire civilizations in the 7th dimension, Hansol explained to Premier Jiwoo during a private meeting, species that exist completely outside normal space. We've barely begun to explore. Think of what we could learn. We'll build an exploration fleet, Jiwoo agreed. But slowly. The galaxy needs time to adjust to one impossible ship. An entire fleet might cause panic. Admiral Dong Hyun retired from military service. His conventional fleet was being restructured as a defensive force only. The age of human military weakness was over. But Dong Hyun wanted to ensure humanity didn't become the next Vrex, drunk on power and conquest. Someone needs to remember what we were, he told his replacement. Someone needs to make sure we never become what we hated. The Vrex integration was the hardest part of the new order. Fleet Master Vorthak had returned to his homeworld in disgrace. But younger Vrex were adapting. Some even applied to join the Dimensional Research Institute. One young Vrex scientist named Kral approached Dr. Yuna nervously. My people were wrong about yours. We saw weakness where there was wisdom. We saw primitiveness where there was potential. Could you teach me about the 7th dimension? Yuna studied him carefully. It will be difficult. Your brain evolved to perceive 6 dimensions. 7 might be impossible for your species. I want to try, Kral insisted. If I fail, at least I will understand why we failed to see what you saw. Yuna smiled. That's the right attitude. Come, I'll show you the first equations. 6 months after the demonstration, humanity detected the first signals from the 8th dimension. It happened during a routine exploration mission. The Transcendence was mapping uncharted regions of 7-dimensional space when Specialist Mi Young noticed anomalies in the quantum foam. These patterns, she said to Admiral Hansol, they look familiar. They look like what we saw 20 years ago, Hansol agreed. When we first detected the 7th dimension, Dr. Kyung-hee ran the calculations. There's an 8th spatial dimension, and maybe a 9th. The 7th dimension isn't the final frontier. It's just another step. The news spread through the Institute. Scientists who had spent decades studying 7 dimensions now realized there was even more to discover. Dr. Bora, in her last days, smiled when she heard the news. Good, she whispered to Yuna, who sat beside her bed. Let them know the universe is bigger than they imagined. Let them know there's always more to learn. Premier Jiwoo addressed the council again, sharing the news of the 8th dimension. We could keep this secret, like we kept the 7th dimension secret. But we're choosing not to. We're telling you because knowledge is too important to hoard. Will you explore it? Talzine asked. Eventually, Jiwoo replied, but not yet. We're still learning to exist in 7 dimensions safely.